Do you want to be a failure or a success? Well, you know, it's hard to be a success. You have to adopt a lot of responsibility, and so you might be willing to take your chances as a failure, but I'm not going to make the presumption that that's going to put you in a situation other than one where you experience a lot of frustration, anger, disappointment, depression, pain, and anxiety at the bottom of the heap. And so generally that's not what people are aiming for, although under certain circumstances, if people don't like responsibility and are willing to take their chances, they might take the irresponsibility and its apparent freedoms over the necessity of thinking things through the medium and long run. Anyways, we stopped here. I suggested to you that one of the primary narrative representations was the known or culture or order. I think those or the explored territory or the dominance hierarchy. I think those things are basically interchangeable from a representational perspective. And you know, in the movie The Lion King, that's represented by Pride Rock, which is this central place of orientation, founded on rock, which is the sort of thing that people embed their memories in. That's why we make sculptures and gravestones and that sort of things. Rock stands for permanent, and to have rock under your feet is to be on a solid foundation, and that's a pyramid in some sense in that movie, and the pyramid is topped by, you know, the king and queen and their offspring. So that's the divine couple. That's one way of thinking about it. And Simba, of course, is the newborn hero. And you know, you understand that, even though it's lions and drawings of lions at that, and animals are acting it out, it's completely irrelevant to you that those characters happen to be animated and that what you're watching is a fiction. So, and I would say to you, with regards to fiction, you know, you might say, well, is fiction true or not? And the answer to that is yes and no. It's not true in that the events portrayed in fiction occurred in the world. They didn't. But their fiction is true the same way numbers are true, I would say. Like, you know, if you have one apple and one orange and one banana, the commonality between all of those three is one. And you might say, well, is one as real as one fruit? Is the abstraction one as real as one fruit? And I would say it depends on what you mean by real, but representing things mathematically and abstractly gives you incredible power, and you could make the case that the abstraction is actually more real than the phenomena that it represents. And certainly mathematicians would make that case. They would say that mathematics is in some sense more real than the phenomenal world. And you know, you don't have to believe that. Mostly it's a matter of choice in some sense, but you can't deny the fact that an abstraction has enough reality so that if you're proficient in using it, you can change the world in insanely powerful ways. You know, I mean, all the computational equipment you people are using are dependent on the abstractions 1 and 0, essentially. And I mean, look at what emerges from that. The dominance hierarchy is part of nature, and because it's so ancient, you have to consider it as part of the mechanism that has played the role of selection in the process of natural selection. And so roughly what seems to happen is that there is a plethora of dominance hierarchies, especially in complex human communities, and many of them are masculine in structure, in that they're dominance hierarchies that primarily men compete in, or that has been the historical norm, and that some men rise to the top based on whatever the dominance hierarchy is based on, and they make their preferential mates. And it's a good strategy for women to engage in, because and many sorts of female animals do precisely this, is they let the males battle it out and then pick from the top. Or often the dominant males, there's no choice on the part of the females, it's the dominant males just chasing away the subordinate males. But with humans, it's usually the case that the females have the opportunity to do at least some choosing. And so we have, if you think about that, what that implies is that we have evolved to climb up dominance hierarchies. And then I would say it's not exactly that even, because there are many different dominance hierarchies, and so the skills that you might use to climb up one might not be necessarily the same skills that you would use to climb up another. And so then I would say what we have evolved for instead, and I'm still speaking mostly on the masculine edge of things, historically speaking, is the ability to climb up the set of all possible dominance hierarchies, right? And that's a whole different idea. It's like the averaged hierarchy across vast spans of time. And I think it's for that reason that we, among others, that we evolved general intelligence, because general intelligence is a general problem-solving mechanism, and it seems to be situation independent, so to speak. And of course, there's been an arms race for the development of intelligence between men and women, because each gender has to keep up with the other, and women have their own dominance hierarchies. There's certainly no doubt about that. And of course, now men and women more increasingly compete within the same hierarchies, and we don't exactly know how to sort that out yet, because it's an extraordinarily new phenomena. But in any case, because of the permanence of the dominance hierarchy, it has come to be represented in fundamental narratives, because human beings, and this is something that we share everywhere, it's the thing the Wall Street banker shares with the Kalahari Kung Bushmen, who are among the, genetically speaking, they seem to be very close to what the most original human beings were like in Africa before the diaspora about 50,000 years ago. But you know, both of those people, despite their vast differences, live in communities that have a hierarchical structure that are composed of individuals that are embedded in a natural world, you know, the world outside of the dominance hierarchy. And so that's the standard human environment, I would say. And so stories that rely on the representations of those environments and their interactions are what you might describe as universal stories, and that's why people can understand them. And I would say further, and this is drawing substantially on, say, derivations of the work of Carl Jung, because I think he delved into this more deeply than anyone else, so a lot of this stuff is quite Jungian in its origins. The commonality between human beings, so you know, you have to have commonalities in order to communicate, right? Axiomatic commonalities, because otherwise you have to explain everything. And so there's many things that human beings don't have to explain to one another. We don't have to explain anger, we don't have to explain jealousy, we don't have to explain fear, we don't have to explain pain, we don't have to explain joy, we don't have to explain love, etc. Those are built into us, and so they're predicates of being human. And you could say that those human predicates and the standard human environment produce standard narratives. And then you could say even further, and this is more of a leap, I would say, is that those who act out the role of the victor in those standard narratives are precisely the people who attain victory in life. And I would say biologically defined, in that they make more attractive partners, but also I believe that there's an alignment between human well-being, which is a very weak word, and participation in these meta-narratives that drive success.